Hi everyone, this is Ben Ryan from Hedgeye's macro team, and we are on with energy policy analyst Joe McMonigle. Joe, let's get right into it. So there's renewed talk of potential production freeze out of OPEC. That's sourced from Venezuela and I believe Kuwait and some others. You've talked about this before. You've written on it very topically. What do you see right now as the potential for an output freeze coming from OPEC near term?
Yeah, so I've got a spoiler alert for the September sequel to the September freeze, and it's that the ending is the same as the April freeze. So there'll be no agreement on a freeze, and mainly it's because Iran and Saudi Arabia just are not going to be in a position to agree to it, and it's in both of their cases it's too soon for a freeze. In the Saudis' case, it's the same story that we've been talking about for over a year. They really want all of 2016 to be a low price environment that further offsets U.S. And non-OPEC production, that delays mega projects and in sort of establishes more capex cuts, so that they're in a position for the market to balance, which they hope timing-wise would be at the end of the year or early next year. For the Iranians, the issue is a little different. They're 8 months into, trying to regain market share after nuclear sanctions were lifted, and they're up about 900,000 barrels a day in crude exports added to the world market. The Iranians say they're about 80% back to where they were pre-sanctions. And so they're not in a position to really agree to any kind of premature limits on production.
Okay, and then, I mean, would you say right now that the Saudis and the Iranians are fine, or at least they welcome the other OPEC members going out in the press and saying, hey, there's going to be a potential production cut, talking about prices, or do you think they don't, secondly, do you think that they don't care one way or the other? Do you think that their preference, as you mentioned, is just is to have lower prices throughout the rest of the year?
Well, I think politically speaking, they probably want to look like they're being cooperative with the other OPEC members. So I don't think they're going to do a lot in the short term, okay, until they absolutely have to say they're not for it, which is, we've basically heard nothing from them since the story broke last Friday. So I wouldn't expect anything from them. The more curious response, I think, has been from the Russians, who, as you may recall from February, were really leading the charge with the Venezuelans for this freeze idea. Their energy minister said yesterday that he basically didn't see a need for it, that prices were more or less in the normal range. I suspect he has a little bit of hurt feelings from the April meeting when they were pretty upset that the Saudis didn't go along with it. My guess is that they will be back in charge of pushing for it and really time that to sort of add to some kind of momentum to boost this effort prior to the September meeting. And it's important to note, too, that the September meeting is not a formal OPEC meeting. It's a meeting around the margins of the International Energy Forum, which is a consumer-producer dialogue meeting. So I'm not even sure they could take any official action at this meeting. So we don't expect anything to happen, and we just don't think it's serious. And ironically, the news that came out in the recent OPEC report, July OPEC production was at a record level, and the Saudis in particular were about 10.67 million barrels a day, which is a record high. Now, yes, people would say they ramp up production during the summer, and that is the reason for it, but they normally don't go up to 10.67. They might go up to 10.5 in order to meet summer, electricity demand. But 10.67, there's a little bit more to that, and I think it's to try to continue this market share program that they're involved with vis-a-vis the Iranians.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's straightforward. And then the next question I was going to ask you is what is it going to take for the Iranians and the Saudis to actually move to cut production? And maybe if you want to expand on what you already said, that They want to see the CapEx plans continue to get revised downward. They want to see production, capital spending plummet probably, and production come offline. And so is that so they're waiting to see they're waiting to see that happen, and then once they feel like some capacity is out of the way, then they could potentially step in.
Well, I think the Saudis are looking at all those factors, and I think the key factor for them, the key barometer for being ready to make some kind of decision on a change in production policy is where is non-OPEC production, specifically U.S. production in the fall. And the EIA data came out today, showed that U.S. production declined again. It fell, slightly from 8.46 to 8.44 million barrels a day, and that's a good sign. But I suspect that there'll be even more dramatic declines in the fall, and I think the Saudis will be waiting to see what happens specifically there. The Iranians is a completely different story, and I'm not sure we even know what their thinking is. The question, for OPEC to do anything different, the Saudis and the Iranians have to agree. So the Iranians have to feel like they're at a point where their production and their exports are ramped up to a level where they could agree to some kind of limits. And I think at some point we're going to be reaching a plateau with regard to Iranian production in terms of what they can do on their own, which is essentially what they've been doing now for the whole of this year. At some point, in order to really go up to pre-sanctions levels of production, they need a lot of Western investment and technology. And they're just at the beginning stages of that. They've agreed to this Iran oil contract scheme that they've come up with, and they're going to start bidding that out. But that's going to be like a multiple year thing. So if they hit that plateau, they may be ready because it could mean higher prices. And so I think we're still looking, as we said previously around the OPEC meeting back in May, we're still looking at the December meeting being consequential in that for the first time in 2 years, in 4 meetings, it's not just a fake meeting. They really will be, I think, considering potential changes to policy. Now, it may not be cutting production, but what we may be talking about is a real freeze at that December meeting. But we don't really know. We won't really know until we see what's happening this fall to U.S. production.
Okay, great. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks a lot, Joe, for joining us, and that's the day we'll look forward to in December. If you do want updates, Joe puts updates out on his Twitter feed constantly. He's at Joe McMonigle. Thanks again, Joe.
Good to be with you.